I'm running out of power. My war against the clean room crippled my diamond power supply, and now my entire base is at risk of shutting down, trapping me on this Skyblock world forever. I need to find a new power supply in this void world before my diamonds run out, and worse, I must atone for my sins against the clean room. Forgive me, Father, for I have sinned. What must I do? For our sins, we must repent. And by that, I mean the new update just came out and deleted Ender.io and the sieving mod that I was using. So basically, our entire base's infrastructure is gone. Well, I suppose if we wanted to be clean, we need a clean base, and what better time to clean stuff up than right now? It's somewhat of a tedious process, but I get to be replacing all the old conduit bits and bobs with new pipes and cables, and honestly, with very few issues, we get the base mostly running back at full capacity. I say mostly because our entire ore processing line has been deleted, and honestly, I think we've somewhat outgrown sieves and deployers. There is, however, a large sieve multi-block of insane power that converts a stack of sand, gravel, or blackstone into one stack of every resource that it sieves into. Very, very, very powerful. And the best part is it's made mostly out of tungsten steel casings. Mostly. It does require stress-proof casing, which are made of a fairly weird alloy called Maraging Steel 300, which has no dust recipe, no alloy smelter recipe. In fact, the only way to make it is to create an entirely new multi-block capable of turning dusts into molten alloys. Yes, indeed, it is time for the behemoth alloy blast smelter. In order for us to make the alloy blast smelter, we need some new alloys, a handful of esoteric ingots with weird names like tantalum carbide, HSLA steel, titanium carbide, and the very difficult to pronounce molybdenum you get it. We'll need a ton of these, honestly, and although they're not very expensive to mix and smelt, both of the mixing and the smelting takes a really, really long time. The mixing is just gonna take a while, but the smelting we can speed up a bit. Remember, we're children of the clean room now. I've shed my shawl of hatred, and now I see what we can gain from this. The smelting time of the ABS alloys can all be reduced by helium gas, something that we can get by being clean. So clean, in fact, that we clean the very air that surrounds us into its component parts. We'll need the cleanest multi-block aside from the clean room, a distillation tower made of clean stainless steel casings that rises high into the sky. Now, this guy needs 50 buckets of air to start, so we actually also need a high voltage input hatch, and it produces so much nitrogen at once that we'll also need a high voltage output hatch too. In fact, from now on, many of our multi-blocks will make so much fluid or items that we're going to need higher than LV input and output ports. Now, the distillation tower is an amazing machine. It can separate fluids and their component parts, but air is not a fluid, so we'll need a vacuum freezer as well in order to cool the air into liquid air and output that directly into the tower. In order to get the air, I want to use more magic plants, so I set up a small processing area for us to produce air and fire essence for now, and hook that into our applied energistic system, and then export the air essence into an essence burner attached to the vacuum freezer to generate gaseous air very quickly. And now we have infinite gaseous air into liquid air processing in our distillation tower that's separating it into tons of different gases, mostly nitrogen and oxygen, but there's a little bit of helium and argon in the air too. Very, very useful. Of course, the distillation tower makes so much per cycle that after just one craft, it's filled its largest output. So we need some way to store all of this stuff, and I love me some super tanks. But those need circuits, and I kind of want to make them at MV tier since, well, they're blue. And although we have access to cheap MV circuits, we're being clean. And the cleanest kind of circuit to make are sock circuits. No, not feet socks. SOCs, system on chips. Something we have had access to for a bit now, but I've been too distracted to pursue it. Socks are special wafer to chip that can make crafting circuits unimaginably cheap, and we can get our hands on sock LV circuits and convert those for cheap into MV circuits. We just need to make a yellow glass lens to engrave sock wafers, and then those are just cut up in a cutter. However, we do need an extreme voltage circuit assembler, not a high voltage one, and although we have all the IV circuits and EV components we need, we can't quite make the EV emitter. We need a quantum eye, which is an upgrade to our ender eyes, and those take radon, a gas that can only really be found in the air of the end dimension, which we can't get to. That being said, we can actually use the same process that we got regular air to get ender air with an essence burner, but the devs predicted this and locked ender air and nether air essence burning behind EV essence burners, which guess what? Take an EV emitter. So the only way to get my hands on radon is to go through the monstrously tedious process of making netherrack in the large chemical reactor, processing it down into of nether agglomeratio, and then converting that into 200 buckets of nether air. Then, I need to make end stone in the large chemical reactor, turn that into ender agglomeratio, and convert that with the nether air into 200 buckets of ender air. Why 200 buckets? Well, because each distillation of ender air requires 200 buckets. Lord, it is expensive and time-consuming, but alas, thus is the cost of cleanliness. And the nether and ender air distillation towers are just kind of taller versions of the air ones, so... Oh, they showed up. And there is our radon and quantumize and lovely EV essence burners and circuit assemblers. Well, being clean really does unlock a lot of stuff for you. Wonder what else it could do. Well, let's focus on the task at hand. LV sock circuits, baby. For literally just one sock, 2 bolts, a circuit board, and a pittance of wire, we can make 6 LV circuits, and so I make a full 6 stacks of them, because why not, and get all of those upgraded into MV. With that, MV super tanks are an absolute breeze, and we can have all of our new and tasty gases stored up in massive amounts. Man, I have been having so much fun being clean that, well, reality slipped my mind. We're not making nearly enough power to support these massive towers, and I've gone and crippled our supply by distilling all of this at once. Crap. Okay, well, off go the towers for now. Let's get back to the task at hand, ore processing. If I can just make a large sieve to get diamonds, we might be able to make things a little bit more stable. Luckily, though, our ender air expenditure was not completely in vain, as it provides loads more helium than regular air, and we're able to speed up our last few alloy blast smelter ingots right up. Though, to be fair, that radon junk took so long that we don't really have that much left to smelt, but still, speed is speed, and clean is speed, or speed is clean, one of those things. Anyways, now we have everything we need to make that heat-resistant plating required for an alloy blast smelter. And good God, is this one big boy. Look at all those coils, those heat vents, and fancy looking casings. Someone get me a glass, because I'm looking at a tall drink of multi-block. This behemoth can now smelt up our Meraging Steel 300, but good God, does it take a while, so let's just work on a side project. IV energy hatches. We'll need iridium in order to make the IV coils, and that we can extract from the rarest metal mixture byproduct of the platinum processing line. Combining that with hydrochloric acid makes iridium metal residue, and centrifuging that makes iridium chloride dust, which can then be reacted with hydrogen to get precious iridium dust. Now with iridium squared away, we do need the HPIC chips for the hatches, and those must be cut by an IV cutter. Oh, and the blade is only tungsten steel. Weird, these things usually have some kind of, laminated glass. Okay, there it is. Yeah, that takes a new type of plastic that we just do not have access to right now. Past me would rush right in, but today we're being clean. Yes, clean. So back to the task at hand. IV hatches are gonna have to wait. I can still overclock. Luckily, our Meraging Steel is ready to be cooled within the vacuum freezer, and that means we can go ahead and process it into proper stress-resistant casings and all the tungsten-y bits as well. All we need is the controller block. That's pure netherite. That's not good. Pure netherite needs ludicrous voltage technology to access that, and I barely have any insane voltage tech. I mean, don't get me wrong, I could get into ludicrous voltage right now, but I'd never make it in time before I ran out of diamonds. I don't think I can even rely on burning diamonds anymore. In fact, now that I say it, burning diamonds doesn't sound very clean. Could there be some other way? Some clean way? A clean path to power? While burning gasoline isn't the cleanest thing to do by far, it does require us to clean one of the dirtiest substances in the universe. Duckling's bane. Oil. But oil distillation isn't cheap. It requires hundreds and hundreds of clean stainless steel casings for the many distillation towers we'll need. And better yet, we need to actually get our hands on oil in the first place, which seems like a bit of a struggle considering the fact that there's nothing but void beneath me. But therein lies my victory. The void is black and bad for you, and oil is black and bad for you, and it turns out that indeed, the void is just pure oil, which we can see with the high voltage prospectors tool. It's all oil. I'm not sure how that works, but not all oil is made equal, and I want heavy oil since it gives loads more resources when distilled. Well, loads more heavy fuel, but that can be turned into pretty much anything else, so I want it. And it does take a bit of flying around, but soon enough, our prospector detects some heavy oil deposits, and I can locate a chunk that has a nice, large supply of the stuff. It is a bit far from the base, and I have no desire to run a giant pipeline, so instead I craft up some blaze rods to turn into ender tanks, which work like ender chests, exists but can be keyed with dye, and they store fluids. Now we need a fluid drilling rig, which is really easy and no issue to set up at all. It costs a measly amount of steel for us, and we can run it at 1 amp of high voltage power with 0 issues. Just chunk load it and have it export into the tank, and we've got black gold a-flowin'. Now onto the cleaning part. We need tons of distillation towers to pull it off. After all, oil was pretty dirty, and that means tons of EV circuits. So for the 100th time, I got on an EV circuit crafting bender and end up with 56 of the shiny fellows to tie us over. Now turning gross heavy oil into refined and ultra powerful high octane gasoline really does take a lot. So I end up crafting 7 distillation towers, many MV and HV energy hatches and transformers, crackers, ME system components, and loads more logistical blocks to help us prepare for the monster task ahead of us. And hoping I have enough in hand to do this in one swoop, but let's be honest with ourselves here, it's time to begin the process. Now distillation is really fun, but it's also a lot of the same things over and over again, so I'll try to breeze past the next 4 hours of my life. First up is a 4-tall distillation tower to refine heavy oil into the sulfuric versions of heavy fuel, light fuel, naphtha, and gas, all of which needs to be desulfurized. Desulfurization happens in a chemical reactor where the sulfuric gases react with hydrogen to produce their cleaned version and some hydrogen sulfide, which is dirty, but I can store it for later use. Now, refinery gas and naphtha we make are pretty much base ingredients on their own, so they don't need to be processed further, but light and heavy fuel have a lot to do, but not before they're cracked, mate. You see, heavy and light fuel on their own are too dirty, they're only good for burning, but we can crack them, breaking them down into more usable chunks to turn them into valuable clean resources. For that, we need cracking multi-blocks. 3 of them for our line, and the first 2 both consume hydrogen, so I build them with an input connected to one another. That way, one can be fed heavy fuel and the other light fuel so that we can produce lightly hydrocracked heavy and light fuel. Our third cracker will be severely steam cracked heavy fuel, and steam is really easy to make in a fluid heater with our infinite water. So we have 3 crackers cracking 3 different fuels, but all of them need to be distilled. Our lightly hydrocracked fuels are both distilled in a 6-tall tower, and their main purpose is to make either a bunch more light fuel or to make stuff like octane, because go figure you need octane for high octane gasoline. Our severely steam cracked heavy fuel is distilled into 11 different resources, so an 11-tall tower, and it is producing us things like butane and butene and butadiene, which are, well, not the same thing. In fact, amongst these towers, we're making a decent supply of methane, ethylene, benzene, toluene, and other useful fuels and gases that we previously had little to no access to. But if you think this is the end of distillation, you're way off. Although we now have the refinery gas, naphtha, toluene, octane, and butene we still need acetone that comes from charcoal distillation. Yeah, that's right. Distillation towers are so clean, they can not only clean oil, but also charcoal. Well, charcoal byproducts. We'll need a pyrolyzed oven reacting logs and nitrogen to make charcoal byproducts, which we can distill in a 4-tall tower into a few useful things, but the one we're looking for right now is wood vinegar. Wood vinegar itself then gets its own distillation at 6-tall to produce some acetone and other useful resources, except for water for some reason. I have no idea how water makes it through the process of burning logs, but sure, it's in there. Now this is great and all, but we still don't actually have a supply of logs yet, so we need a new and surprisingly expensive multi-block, the tree greenhouse. It's weirdly huge and mostly made of steel. This behemoth just makes logs. That's it. It is pretty useful for us though, as it keeps our acetone processing alive. And now that we have this city skyline of stainless steel, I'm actually pretty proud of it. All the base resources for high octane gasoline running off of one 16 amp high voltage converter is pretty sweet. But let's get that gasoline flowing, because it's time. We'll need a large chemical reactor combining naphtha, refinery gas, acetone, and menthol to make raw gasoline, which can be reacted with toluene to become regular gasoline, and then sent into another large chemical reactor to be mixed with octane, more toluene, nitrous oxide, a reaction of nitrogen and oxygen, and ethyl tetrabutyl ether, a reaction of ethanol and butene that I can't pronounce. And with some final AE hookups, we have a fully passive supply of the best combustion fuel in the game. No joke, one craft of this stuff can burn for hours and hours inside of a combustion engine. And although high-octane gasoline will burn for hours, it only takes seconds to subscribe, since if you're this far into the video, I know you're not going to miss the next one. And even better, if you want a world download, well, now's your chance. We just passed 500 days in this world, so I'm making it accessible to all my supporters on Patreon, and soon after, channel members and Discord members, so get it while it's hot. Now, the type of combustion engine I want asks for LUV technology, so we gotta settle for a temporary setup of lesser ones, since I don't want a chance of burning our diamond supply out before we manage to hit ludicrous voltage. Now, 5 HV combustion generators should do the trick, and I can even add new flux storages to our flux network network to be able to buffer up to 600 million FE. But again, we're limited by ludicrous voltage technology. However, this time we've been clean. This time we have an energy base to stand on. Let's get crazy, baby. We need new circuits, ludicrous circuits, and nothing is more ludicrous than epoxy resin, I guess, since that's the base of the nanoprocessor tier of circuits. And being clean is already paying off, as it turns out almost everything we need for epoxy resin is a byproduct of high-octane gasoline production. The only thing we're missing is phenol, but guess what? Distilling wood tar, which we already get from wood vinegar, will net us a phenol supply as well as topping up our benzene and toluene. Now, epoxy must be made inside of a large chemical reactor, but honestly those are becoming really cheap by now. I decided to be extra clean and make a condensed and compact epoxy machine. So you be the judge if I pull that off. The first LCR needs to produce epichlorohydrin, which we can make by combining propene, chlorine, and hypochlorous acid, which is just water and chlorine. And it even makes some dilute hydrochloric acid that I can distill into the pure stuff and send right into our AE system. But we need a dry ingredient, sodium hydroxide dust, which we can get from electrolyzing salt water. And hey, we actually produce salt water from making epichlorohydrin, so we don't actually need to input any of that. But now that we have epichlorohydrin flowing, and our machine is definitely looking clean and compact, we still need to turn that into epoxy, which is even easier as we just have to pump in phenol and acetone, as well as run that saltwater loop again for sodium hydroxide dust, and distill some dilute hydrochloric acid that gets made as well. And then bam! Liquid epoxy flowing in and accessible from a big stainless steel drum. The machine is... well, it works, and it allows us to make epoxy sheets into blank epoxy boards and finally etch those into wonderful epoxy circuit boards ready for nanoprocessing. But we have a ton of circuit crafting on our horizon, and these guys need some new resources. Up first, the cheapest high voltage circuits. We need nano CPUs, which will require us to treat existing CPU wafers. We'll need an EV reactor as well as carbon fibers, which I can grow in an autoclave using carbon dust and our new epoxy. And by combining CPU wafers, carbon fibers, and liquid glowstone inside of our EV chemical reactor inside of the clean room, we can produce blue CPU wafers that I guess are smaller. By cutting those into chips and combining them with various SMD bits, some wiring, and our new circuit boards, we have our first nano processors, HV circuits at a decent price. And better yet, upgrading those to EV is ridiculously inexpensive and can be done immediately, but IV wants a bit more, specifically NOR wafers, so we need to dye a new pink lens, which is as always annoying to get, but also pretty cute, so I don't mind it that much. Engrave, cut, assemble, and we have some very reasonably priced IV circuits in our hands. And now for LUV. It's nothing we don't already own, but they're monstrously expensive, so we'll definitely want to be careful in how many we make. Thankfully, all we need is a few to get ourselves a chemical bath, so I'm gonna stick to only making 4 of them. We still have plenty to do here though, like new rubbers, plastics, and alloys we need. And to start, I'd really like to finally have a supply of styrene butadiene rubber, as it's just the best rubber there is. And it's actually really cheap for us since we already have oil processing set up. And unsurprisingly, we just need styrene and butadiene, which we can get from ethyl benzene, and we already have a lot of butadiene respectively. Now, we do need ourselves some laminated glass here, since the IV mixer and many future machines require it. And for that, we'll need polyvinyl butyrol, which has plenty of tedious steps for us to get through. We're gonna need a lot of hydrogen for this, which sucks, since our topaz supply of the stuff is dried up completely in the wake of our base being deleted, but luckily I can just electrolyze it out of water. Still, it's a bit of a bore to make, so vinyl acetate to polyvinyl acetate, and the very fun to pronounce butyraldehyde, which combines with our polyvinyl acetate to make polyvinyl butyrol that can coat tempered glass into laminated glass inside of a forming press. This unlocks the IV mixer for us, which we'll need to make the rhodium-plated palladium alloy we need for ludicrous voltage machines. But we're waiting on some circuits to craft at the moment, so I turn my attention to making some polyphenol sulfide, a plastic we'll use to coat higher tier wires. It's actually very easy to make, as the fluid form of it is just benzene, chlorine, oxygen, and some sodium sulfide dust, so it's plentiful and able to be converted right into thin sheets. But if you thought these long and weird words were done, too bad, because my circuits are ready for the IV mixer, so now we get to say rhodium and palladium a whole lot. Oh, and look, it's 5 p.m. It's time for my mandatory platinum processing line segment. Both rhodium and palladium come from different resources inside of the platinum processing line, so here we go again. Okay, well, maybe I'm being dramatic, as we have a decent supply of raw palladium, but rhodium really is an issue, because I may have trashed all of the rhodium sulfate that I made a few weeks ago. Whoops. And it really does suck, because you don't get a lot of it from processing a inert metal mixture, and it doesn't turn into a lot of the rhodium goodness we need, but each rhodium dust does turn into a decent handful of the rhodium-plated palladium that we need, and with some argon, it takes a dip in Lake EBF and is then cooled in valuable and usable ingots. The LUV machine wire is niobium titanium, which is actually really simple to make, since titanium we have by the thousands, and niobium comes from an ore that we also have by the thousands. And all we need to breach into the LUV tech is the electric motors, pistons, conveyors, and robot arms, which seem to have a really weird recipe. It looks like you need to upgrade an IV version of the stuff with a data stick inside of a scanner? Okay. Well, a data stick is easy. It's just a circuit assembler craft with resources we already have and save for some NAND chips, but you know the deal. Die, lens, laser cut, we're done. So what, I just put the pump in and the stick here and it makes another stick? Oh no. No. The data stick is just using an assembly line. I forgot about the assembly line. Oh, not again. Not another multi-block in my way. I can't afford another war. I can't do this. I can't make an LUV chemical bath in time. I failed. Wait, there exists powerful forms of each of the regular machines in Gregtech, ultimate beings of automation capable of performing multiple tasks at once, but they are also multi-blocks, and multi-blocks can overclock. If I can get my hands on the large washing plant as well as IV energy hatches, then maybe, just maybe, I can push it to its limits and access ludicrous voltage chemical bathing. I have to try. We need HPIC wafers to make IV energy hatches, which will require us to make the IV cutter and chemical reactor for both of them to live within the sacred clean room. We'll also need vanadium gallium and indium phosphide gallium, the first of which is painfully easy, but indium needs some coaxing. Galena and sphalerite need to be purified and then mixed with sulfuric acid to create indium concentrate, which then must be reacted with aluminum to extract the indium dust. It's honestly got miserably bad return rates, but it's the only way we can get indium, so what can I do? HPIC wafers are truly expensive for us, and it doesn't make it easier that they only cut into 2 chips, but we finally have them. The last little step we need for IV energy hatches is a bit more iridium, and we're all familiar with the platinum line now, yeah? So I'll skip it. And now, with multiple IV energy hatches finally assembled, I hold the key to ludicrous voltage power. I hope this works, but we're not ready for it yet. Although I torn it down as its energy consumption was too great, we need the services of the great alloy blast smelter again, and we may as well test out ludicrous power on it. We require watertight alloy to make the casings for the large washing plant, and only by the power of the alloy blast smelter can it be mixed, and running it at LUV is beautiful, really, true glory, but too glorious as it devours our energy buffers, so we'll need to be careful in running it for too long, which actually shouldn't be too much of an issue because at these levels of heat, recipes absolutely soar by. 38 seconds for a single craft with a helium boost. Ludicrous, baby. With all of our temporary power systems running full force, it's time to really push the limits of this base. Watertight alloy is cooled and pressed and lathed and shaped into watertight casings ready for their new multi-block master. And now, we build. We hope. Oh, Greg gods, please allow me to overclock this to tier skip. Grant me this one kindness. It works. Oh my god, it actually works. Ludicrous voltage power right at my fingertips. We can do this. We can make pure netherite. But first we need debris dust, which we can extract from netherrack. I just need to macerate it into dust, extract it into agglomeratio, and then centrifuge it for tiny, and I mean tiny amounts of debris. Literally a 2% chance to get 1/9 of a debris dust. And for a large sieve, we need 16. So that's 7,200 netherracks processed. Huh. So I set up a quick automatic processing line, and thank God, because it takes literally an hour and a half to produce the 144 tiny debris dust that we need for one large sieve. But I'd like more than one large sieve, and as fate would have it, I actually do touch grass with my friends sometimes, so I just left my computer running as I stepped away from the Greg. Oh my god, that was terrible. Put me back, put me back. We have plenty of debris dust now, so we must purify it. First, packing up the tiny debris dust into full-sized ones, and then reacting it with a mixture of chlorine and fluorine to purify it into purified debris dust. But pure debris is not what we want. We want pure netherite. So here comes ludicrous voltage power. We need to mix ethane and chlorine for dichloroethane, and then that with even more chlorine to make tetrachloroethane, which our purified debris dust is bathed in at extraordinary amounts of power in order to produce 100% pure netherite dust. It's beautiful, and also egregiously energy expensive, so we better get through these things fast. They take a swim in the EBF, and out comes pure midnight black ingots ready for shaping into gears. And once I have 4 gears made of the purest form of the most powerful metal, we can finally assemble a large sieve. Oh, glory day to this monolith of tungsten steel, this behemoth of ore collection. With merely 1 stack of sand, this god of production will create 25 stacks of different ores. What opulence, what splendor. We did it. We finally did it. But there is much work yet to do if I should wish to escape. Much work indeed.